Biology has its etymological roots from the Greek words bios and logos, which mean life and reason respectively. In other words, biology means the study of life and all living organisms. Biology also studies the interactions between living beings, being parasitism and mutualism the most prevalent. In parasitism, one individual damages another organism to get profit out of it, while in mutualism, both organisms give and receive, sharing a mutual benefit. Since the Earth's diversity is really vast, biology has been divided into many branches. Some of these are anatomy, anthropology, botany, embryology, biomedicine, biochemistry, cytology, genetics, histology, immunology, virology, and zoology. Thanks to biology and genetics, we've discovered that the genes allow humans to pass genetic information from generation to generation due to DNA. The DNA is isolated from the rest of the cell thanks to the nucleus. These discoveries support the theory that all living things have a common ancestors. First, living beings started with archaea, then bacteria, and after eukarya. Centuries, humans have tried to answer the question, how did life originate on the planet? Many have speculated that a supreme being created life out of nowhere. Some others have concluded that a big explosion created life spontaneously. Natural phenomena have been also credited for the creation of life, like the explosion of a volcano, meteorites, or electrical activity in the atmosphere originating life. Since we know that DNA and RNA are responsible for the adaptation and survival of living beings, scientists cannot give a certain and specific origin for life. So the question, how did life originate on the planet, is still an unsolved incognita for humans.
Characteristics of living things. Nutrition. Living things take in materials from their surroundings that they use for growth or to provide energy. Nutrition is the process by which organisms obtain energy and raw materials from nutrients such as proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Respiration. Respiration is the release of energy from food substances in all living cells. Living things break down food within their cells to release energy for carrying out different processes. Movement. All things move. Plants also move in various different ways. The movement may be so slow that it is very difficult to see. Excretion. All living things excrete as a result of the many chemical reactions occurring in cells. They have to get rid of waste products which may poison the cells. Growth. Growth is seen in all living things. It involves using food to produce new cells. The permanent increase in cell number and size is called growth. Reproduction. All living organisms have the ability to produce offspring. Sensitivity. All living things are able to sense and respond to stimuli around them, such as light, temperature, water, gravity, and chemical substances. Differences between the prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. Eukaryotic cells contain membrane-bound organelles, such as the nucleus, while prokaryotic cells do not. Differences in cellular structure of prokaryotes and eukaryotes include the presence of mitochondria and chloroplasts, the cell wall, and the structure of chromosomal DNA.
History of the microscope. As we all know, man has always wanted to see things in a better way apart from their eyes. For example, man invented the telescope to observe the celestial bodies in a better way than just looking to the sky. And also, man has always wanted to see tiny things in a more zoomed-in way and more detail to observe what are they. In this case, we're going to talk about the history of the microscope. The microscope started as just magnifying glasses in the ages of the Serbian Empire, but many events needed to happen so that we can get to the compound microscope that we have today in almost all the laboratories around the world. The question of who invented the microscope, it still doesn't have a clear answer yet. Many said it was Zacharias Janssen or Galileo Galilei or Cornelius Debrel. Clearly known is that the first microscope had a zoom of 3 times 9, and it only had the basic parts before of becoming the compound microscope. These basic parts were an eyepiece and a objective to see the objects. Years later, Anton van El developed a manufacturing technique that allowed him to create microscopes that could help see things with a magnification of 200 times its size. But these microscopes weren't too popular in the scientific community because many scientists at that time said that the microscope had some defect in the lenses. Then in the 18th century, the lenses were modified so they don't have that defect, but it wasn't until the 19th century that the microscope became a reliable tool for many scientists in Europe and around the world. At that time, the microscope became the compound microscope as scientists add more and more tools to the microscope so it could give better results and also that it could be a better tool. One of the most known discoveries that were made using the microscope was the cell. So let's talk a little bit about the history of the cell. The first person to use the microscope for scientific reasons and to see something through it and to see the cell was Robert Hooke. Robert Hooke saw the cells of an cork oak dead wood, and he called it cell because it reminded him of the cells where the monks in the monastery lived, that were tiny rooms separated just by a wall, and that's why he called what he saw cells. And then Anton van El observed more different cells. He observed spermatozoa and protozoa. The 19th century was an abundant cell discovery century because some of the most important discoveries related to the cell were the following. Robert Brown described the nucleus in 1831. Johannes Evangelista introduced the term protoplasm in 1839. Rudolf van Kolliker identified the mitochondria, an organelle, in 1857, and Rudolf Virchow proposed that all cells came from pre-existing cells. That assertion became another postulate of the cell theory. Let's talk about the cell theory. It has three recognized authors, Schwann, Schleiden, and Virchow, and it has four main postulates. Number 1. The cell is the morphological and structural unit of all living things. Number 2. Every cell comes from a pre-existing cell, as Virchow said. Number 3. The cell is the physiological unit of all life. All vital functions take place inside the cell. And number 4. The cell contains all the hereditary information that can be passed from one generation of living organisms to the next generation of living organisms. Last but not least, there's a fifth postulate that is not too official, but we're gonna say it anyway. The fifth postulate says the following. If the morphological, structural, and physiological unit of life is healthy, then the individual will be healthy. But should this unit lose its health and this imbalance propagates, there will be disease.
I will talk about the cellular transport. What is the cellular transport? It's everything that enters or leaves a cell has to pass through the cell membrane, which is an organelle that is present in all cell types. This process is carried out by cellular transport. Transport can be classified according to the amount of molecules that pass through the membrane. It's classified in active and passive. Active. This transport expends energy and goes against gradient of concentration. Passive. This transport doesn't waste energy and goes in favor of concentration gradient. It can be simple diffusion, facilitate diffusion, ultrafiltration, or dialysis. Simple diffusion. The molecules cross the lipid bilayer. Gases such as carbon dioxide and oxygen pass through it freely. Facilitate diffusion. The passage of molecules depends on the presence of the integral membrane proteins that allow this passage. These proteins can form channels or complex transporters. Ultrafiltration or dialysis diffusion. Water and some solutes pass through a membrane as a result of hydrostatic pressure. What is the endocytosis? It's the incorporation of material into the cell. It is conformed by pinocytosis, phagocytosis and receiver-mediated endocytosis. What is a exocytosis? It's the secretion of the material produced by cells. It is conformed by regulator and constitutive. And finally, the levels of organization. It's conformed by atom, molecule, cellular organelles, cell, tissues, organ system, organism, population, community, ecosystem, and the biome.
Now we're gonna talk about the different types of organ systems and homeostasis.
Now, for the organ system, we have the circulatory one. This system is in charge of transport oxygen and nutrients to the other cells, and also to remove their wastes like carbon dioxide. Now we have the lymphatic one. This organ system is in charge of defending the body against infections and diseases. We have the digestive one, which is the one that processes food and other nutrients to the body. We also have the endocrine system, which is the one that communicates the body through hormones. The integumentary system, which provides protection against injuries and the loss of fluids. The muscular system, which provides movement, support, and heat production to the body. The nervous system, which collects, transports, and processes information. The reproductive one, which provides the body gametes or sex cells and sexual hormones. The respiratory one, which exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide between the blood, air, and body tissues. The skeletal one, which provides support to the soft tissues of the body. The urinary one, which eliminates the excess of water, salt, and waste from the blood and the body. And finally, we have the immune system, which is the one that defends the body against microbiological pathogens like bacteria and viruses. Now we can talk about homeostasis. When talking about homeostasis, we need to remember what Claude Bernard wrote in 1865, which is this: all the vital mechanisms, varied as they are, have only one object, to present constant the internal environment. Then, in 1928, Walter Buchanan introduced the term homeostasis, which refers to the response of an organism to maintain to its internal environment. With this, we can infer that every cell will take care of its self-regulation. This means to maintain its homeostasis. With the topic of homeostasis, we have two important concepts: positive feedback and negative feedback. Negative feedback counteracts the stimulus to maintain its homeostasis. One great example is the regulation of glucose in the blood. And finally, we have positive feedback, which magnifies the stimulus to maintain its homeostasis. A great example of this is the secretion of milk during lactance.
Well, basically, health is when all the mechanisms in a body are having a well functioning. And in the other side, disease is when one or more of these mechanisms stop having the well functioning and they start with some troubles. Nowadays, humans' health is being affected by the industrialization, automation, and acceleration in human space. Also, with the development of science, humans discovered which is their place in health, and that led them do some factors in order to improve their own health. Well, now let's go on with adolescence health. As we all know, adolescence is a period of time in which we suffer some changes. both physically and mentally. This period of time is approximately divided between 12 years and 19 years old for women and 21 years old for men. Well, but why is so important the health during this period of time? Well, adolescence is when people realize that they need to have a very good health in three different aspects: the physical health, the mental health, and the social health. Well, it's very known that adolescents do not have trouble while treating with their physical health. This is because their body is having a lot of changes, and that helps it to maintain very active. But on the other hand, the aspects that are very difficult during adolescence are the mental and social health. This is because these aspects are having a great development in order to become a mature person, but this makes the mental disorders become a lot susceptible during this period of time. Well, let's begin with the last topic, that is healthy lifestyle. Well, what is healthy lifestyle? Well, we all know that healthy lifestyle is very related with the things that a social group do constantly, better known as their personal habits. But specifically in healthy lifestyle is the one that promotes having a great balance in all the aspects that a human requires.